Have you ever felt that your presence bothers you, even when you do nothing? Have you ever noticed that the more kindness you offer, the more some people turn away or even attack you in a subtle way? You're not imagining things. There's something in you that lights the shadow of those who still live in darkness. Carl Jung said, "What bothers us in others reveals what we have not yet healed in ourselves." And empaths, no matter how loving they are, carry a light that reveals hidden wounds. Wounds that many prefer to keep buried, and when your light touches those wounds, resentment begins to grow. Silent, hidden, deadly. Maybe you've already attracted people who at first seemed to admire you, but over time, they started to criticize you behind your back, diminish you, suck you in. These people don't openly hate you. That would be easy. To see, they love you with spite, they praise you with envy, and if they say they are their friends, while secretly rooting for you to fail. In this video, you'll understand why this happens and how to get out of this cycle. But mainly, you will discover how to shine without apologizing. The silent light of the empath, the brightness that bothers the dark eyes. You know that light that comes from within, a serene, almost silent glow that emanates from his presence effortlessly, and yet changes the space around him. For the empath, this light usually comes from their ability to feel deeply. You understand feelings, environments, even emotional currents without needing words. Its light is not noisy. She doesn't scream. It just exists, and that's why it bothers you. It is this light, gentle and powerful, that attracts. It attracts those who feel hungry for understanding, acceptance, presence. People you don't always know how to identify because they arrive like butterflies, light, graceful, delicate, until something starts to change. It turns out that, in some cases, this uncomfortable light reveals something that many hide, their own darkness, the unhealed wounds. The pain is stuck. The envy that did not turn into humility but became trapped in bitterness. And here's the point. The empath doesn't dare turn off his light. He doesn't know. He continues to illuminate. But the one who did not allow himself to shine feels, unconsciously, that the brightness of the other exposes him. Exposing what has not been taken care of inside. It is a silent conflict. It is an internal struggle projected outwards. And often these others who resent your light attract you, and they get closer to feel that glow and secretly try to suffocate him. The moment you notice this, you may feel an icy pimple. It can be hard to admit that the affection, kindness, or impeccable presence you offer has such a contradictory effect, but it's true. The light is annoying. And people who live under the weight of the shadow may react in subtle ways. A compliment with a skewed look, a hug that weighs, a conversation that in the end leaves you exhausted. The empath begins to question himself. Am I exaggerating? Did I imagine? But no, it's real, and it is in this emotional vulnerability that the cracks begin. The empath feels betrayed, hurt, confused. He wants to understand why that friendship that seemed sincere turned into resistance, criticism, even disgust. You are always analyzing, reflecting, thinking, did I make a mistake? Could it be? Meanwhile, resentment, hidden, disguised, grows. It grows in silence. It grows as you disarm. It grows as long as you offer light, thinking it heals. What? I need to remind you, and what the empath needs to hear loud and clear, is your light is not to blame for the ghosts of others. It just exists. It attracts, it heals, and yes, it bothers you, but it is not their mission to extinguish the light of others who have already been extinguished by lovelessness, by pain, by open wounds. Allow yourself to reread this part. Let this idea sink in. You can't turn off your light to please those who live in the shadows, and that doesn't make you selfish. It makes you whole. Every word you say, every attitude you take, every look, all of it emanates something that goes beyond the conscious. Empathy for the empath is a deep vibrational field, and that field is felt. It is absorbed. Be with love. Be afraid. Be with resentment. If this light turns on what is in darkness, it is because it exists, and the empath needs to recognize this. His brilliance is not a mistake. It is not something to change. It is not his responsibility to erase. He must also understand, not everyone who approaches wants to revel in his light. Some want to steal it, some want to erase it, and some don't even know about them, but they do, and they react. That's where the pain of the empath lies, because he wants to heal, to welcome, to be light. And when he discovers that his light generates resentment, the heart tightens, the soul gets tired, and doubts arise. If you've ever felt it, a sympathy turned into silence, an affection turned into criticism, a gentle look turned away, you're not alone. You are living, awakening to something that needs to be seen. The silent light of the empath bothers him, and it attracts, and he exposes, and sometimes it is attacked. But remember, it also has power. Power of healing, power of reflection, power of transformation. You can let that light shine, not as the one who imposes, but as the one who chooses to exist even when it bothers you. This is just the beginning. For when that light meets the shadow that dwells in others, without them realizing it, an invisible, profound journey begins. And that's where we're going to go. If this passage resonated with you, just let me know that I will sequence and complete the 950 words. If you want to adjust the tone, rhythm, or any detail, let me know. Carl Jung and the shadow, why his light activates what is unresolved in others. Carl Jung was one of the first to name what empaths experience in their skin every day, without even knowing it. He called this hidden side of the human being a shadow. It is not evil, as many think. It is simply what has been rejected, ignored, or not understood within us. All unseen pain turns into a shadow. All repressed anger, all envy denied, all trauma ignored. The shadow is, in Jung's words, everything that the individual refuses to recognize in himself. And that's exactly where the draw comes in. The light that the empath carries has a side effect. It activates the shadow of others. Unconsciously, of course, but real. A kindness without ego. A look that understands without judging. A presence that plays where no one dares to touch. This is a mirror, and for many, a mirror that reveals too much. Imagine that someone spends their entire life hiding their resentments, avoiding facing the fact that you feel jealousy, anger, insecurity. Suddenly, a person appears who shines, but not with arrogance. She shines with presence, with truth, lightly. This glow directly touches the core of what that person avoided feeling. And then, the internal war begins. A silent but violent war. The light of the empath activates a sense of inadequacy in those who have not yet made peace with their own shadow. And since the unconscious hates to be exposed, it attacks. Not frontally. That would be easy to deal with. He attacks with veiled criticism, subtle comparisons, distancing disguised as, "I'm just busy." It is a form of self-protection from the shadow. As if to say, if I dim his light, maybe I don't need to look at what hurts me. Carl Jung also said, "The greater the light, the greater the shadow." And this goes for both those who shine and those who observe. When you grow emotionally, you light up more areas around you, including other people. The empath often does not understand why it causes such contradictory reactions. He offers help, understanding, and is met with a mixture of gratitude and rejection. This isn't about what he does, it's about what it activates, and most people don't know how to deal with it. They are not aware that they are being confronted with their shadows. They just feel discomfort, and they attribute this discomfort to you. Your way of speaking, your way of being, your light. The cruelest thing is that the empath by nature absorbs this guilt. It tries to adjust its brightness. It decreases. The tone changes. He wonders, and he begins, without realizing it, to slowly turn off his own light, just so as not to disturb him. But the empath needs to understand it is not his responsibility to carry the shadow of others. And even more, he cannot save those who have not even recognized that they are injured. The light can point the way, but it cannot walk for anyone. What Jung teaches us is that the shadow is not the enemy. It is the key to transformation. But this only happens when the person is ready to face it. While this does not happen, she protects herself, and one of the forms of protection is to resent those who are already where they would like to be. Therefore, people who are still stuck in their unresolved shadows tend to feel threatened by the empath's energy. They don't understand why, but something in them feels, with this person I can't fake it. And this is unbearable for those who live in disguise. The draw needs to stop trying to convince, of trying to explain its light. He simply needs to accept. There are those who will not understand you because they do not even understand themselves. And that's okay. Carl Jung said that the process of individuation, that is, becoming who you really are, only happens when you accept to integrate the shadow. The empath has already started this process without even knowing it. And this is something rare, bright, powerful, but also lonely, because the path of light requires courage. And courage sometimes scares, but it also liberates. The good news is, when you recognize this, the empath stops sabotaging itself. He understands that his light is a gift, and that those who cannot receive it are still on their own journey. Therefore, when you notice that discomfort in the other's eyes, that disguised criticism, that withdrawal for no reason, don't rush to blame yourself. Ask yourself, what in me may have touched the shadow that the other did not want to see? This question changes everything. It takes you out of guilt and gives you back power, the power to continue being who you are, to keep shining even when your light activates what others still don't know how to deal with. Carl Jung did not write for empaths, but unknowingly he left a map. And those who follow him understand, being light in a world full of shadows is at the same time a blessing and a calling, and this journey is just beginning. Poisoned relationships, when envy disguises itself as friendship, friendship when true welcomes. But for the empath, sensitive, genuine, full of love, sometimes friendship turns into a subtle poison. Something that begins with shared laughter and affection dissolves into veiled criticism, comments disguised as jokes, and then into the emotional misalignment that corrodes the soul without being immediately noticed. The empath tends to welcome with the generosity of the heart. It offers emotional support, ears, arms, time, and expects reciprocity. But when this reciprocity fails, a curious thing happens. Envy creeps in, unnoticed. It grows like a tenuous seed, nourished by the contrast between what the empath offers and what the other, out of insecurity, is afraid of or unable to offer himself. And that's when friendship is poisoned. Because it is difficult to face. Envy, she disguises herself. He hides in a malicious joke, in a camouflage criticism. You're shining too much. It must be easy to pay attention like this, right? Always being the center, or in a sudden and silent withdrawal. The empath, always empathetic, tries to rescue the friendship, adjusts the tone, reduces its brightness, but nothing solves the void that grows on the other side. This cycle becomes a pull rope. You bend over, trying to maintain the connection. The other turns away, suggests that you don't understand your own intentions. And between the two, a gray area arises where affection turns into resentment. And be careful, it is not the fault of the empath. Silent envy is not born of him, but of the other's inability to deal with his own light. When someone doesn't heal their wounds, you become an uncomfortable reminder that there is a cure, and that can hurt. This discomfort, combined with envy, creates a fertile ground for poison dynamics. A 2024 study of relationships between empaths and narcissistic individuals showed that while empath sincerity can be mesmerizing, it also breeds vulnerability. The envious person, often with narcissistic or emotionally dependent traits, absorbs this energy and uses it to reaffirm their own frustration, either due to a lack of self-esteem or unresolved traits. In addition, toxic people are attracted to empathy because it offers a safe haven. As noted by experts, empaths provide a non-judgmental space where the toxic can dump its emotional baggage without reciprocity, creating a dynamic of emotional drainage, and the empath, accustomed to fixing, ending the imbalance, enters this toxic zone with compassion, trying to heal on their own. But this fix never comes from both sides. He is walking alone on someone else's land. Friendship becomes toxic, poison disguised as care, and you, who welcome, begin to lose yourself. This cycle is like repeating an old script, an unconscious reenactment of past wounds, perhaps a childhood where empathy was used but never reciprocated. Jung would call this the archetypal pattern that comes back until it is recognized. The way out isn't easy. It requires recognizing disguised toxicity, learning to stop fixing it yourself, and protecting your heart with well-drawn boundaries. To see that not all other people's pain is yours to heal. 4. The hidden cycle. Why empaths keep repeating the same emotional patterns. If poisonously disguised relationships become commonplace, why do you, empath, keep repeating the same cycles? The answer lies in the invisible, in the hidden cycle, shaped by deep patterns of attachment, shadow, and unconscious repetition. We tend to repeat internal dramas until we transform them. This repetition compulsion, already observed in psychology, leads us to unconsciously seek the known. The unconscious prefers the known even if it destroys us. And the empath, because he has strong compassion, tends to fall repeatedly into relationships where he gives a lot and receives little. He believes that he can save, fix, enlighten. Too often, these patterns are inherited shadows, such as emotional dependence, anxious attachment, or the need for approval, that manifest themselves in those who seek love in the form of unrequited care. Precisely for this reason, many empaths are attracted to people who are emotionally unavailable, with narcissistic or codependent patterns. This is because, on some level, those emotional patterns resonate with one's own affective history and therefore feel familiar, even if painful. In addition, there is a mirror effect. The empath carries a pattern of giving, and the other carries the complement of not corresponding, generating a cycle that paradoxically seems complete. Perhaps because the empath finds strength in healing, perhaps because he has not yet learned that loving does not require giving until he bleeds. And there's more. Jungian psychoanalysis tells us that even our dazzle with light can be a shadow. When we use empathy as a bargaining chip, if you offer light, expecting something in return, recognition, belonging, empathy becomes a condition, and patterns are repeated. Jung proposed that individuation, becoming whole, occurs only when we confront our hidden shadows, integrating them rather than projecting them. Until you do that, the cycle continues. And the empath repeats the script of pain with hope. Liberation comes from a conscious look at it. It is recognizing that the pattern is not something that you brought into your life, but that it has played an unconscious, active role until today. And it can break with awareness, self-care, therapy, and support. When the empath understands the cycle, he no longer feels like a victim, but a learner. He stops repeating the plot and begins to create a new script based on true reciprocity, emotional respect, and shared light. without exhaustion. The illusion of the savior, the unconscious desire to heal the one who came to consume you. You, empath, know the weight of carrying your heart in your eyes. When someone suffers, their first instinct is to help, to offer strength, listening, understanding, and sometimes even sacrificing himself. This comes from a deep place, an emotional heritage that says, if I take care of it, they will see. Me, if I enlighten, I will be loved. This is the root of the illusion of the savior. You connect with those who need affection, who bring pain and want to heal. But some arrive with a thirst for light, not healing. They abuse their empathy, their generosity, not to grow, but to suck. And you, moved by compassion, fall into the trap without realizing it. It's like trying to put out the fire with emotional gasoline. The more you strive to save, the more the other person remains in the role of the victim, because this guarantees them attention, control, and justification for not changing. Research such as Very Well Minds clearly shows that this dynamic between empath and narcissist is often toxic. The empath gives without receiving, while the narcissist lives in search of validation and emotional manipulation. Imagine an invisible magnetic field. You, living light, light up those who can't shine. But instead of rekindling their own light, that person becomes dependent on yours. And this emotional dependence activates your impulse to care, even at the expense of yourself. The shadow we mentioned earlier takes shape here. Your desire to heal hides an unconscious fear of abandonment, of not being loved by yourself. Then you heal the other, hoping to feel whole. And as this dynamic continues, its light gradually fades, extinguished by the sacrifice it was to bring connection, and becomes an escape from its own need to be cared for. In addition, on the networks and in the reports of empaths, this fantasy of a savior is common. I tried to help, I did everything, but in the end, I felt empty and used. Something psychologists relate directly to emotional caregiver syndrome, where a lack of boundaries makes you vulnerable to burnout. Healing begins when you realize that you cannot carry those who do not want to be healed. The empath, by choosing to take emotional responsibility for the other, becomes a martyr, and the sacred light becomes weight. The first step to releasing this burden is to recognize healing does not mean saving, and you deserve to be saved as well, for yourself. Stopping this cycle is not selfishness, it is emotional survival. It is to erase the illusion of savior, to embrace your own light without hurting your essence. How resentment settles in unnoticed and sucks your life energy. Have you ever noticed that resentment sometimes sneaks in like a silent shadow, seeping into looks, fake smiles, subtle gestures? In the emotional universe of the empath, the resentment of others can be the invisible thief of his vital energy. It all starts with a spark, a disguised comparison, a compliment mixed with envy, an affection that is not reciprocated. It is an imperceptible but constant weight, and if it is not noticed, it settles in the form of an emotional scar. Psychology already points out this pattern. Individuals who resent the light of others will react in a poisonous way without denouncing the reason, but leaving emotional marks. In relationships with narcissists, for example, the toxic cycle is sustained by this imbalance. While one gives, the other drains. The empath, however sensitive, is often slow to perceive this resentment back, because the resentment is subtle, almost camouflaged in exaggerated care. You end up believing that the other person is just tired, just needs space, but in fact, an emotional void begins to drain your energy. The empath finds himself exhausted, confused, questioning his own intentions. Am I too intense? Do I care too much? And in this doubt, he gives in. He gives up his light, his limits, his voice, and unshown resentment gains ground. A forum account on empaths and narcissists echoes this. You see the potential of the other. You drive, you support them, and they absorb it without reciprocity. This brings out an unhealthy dynamic where attention seems to help, but it empties. Jung left us clues. The shadow is not something distant, it is close, within others and within us. Resentment, seen as a cast shadow, needs to be faced. If ignored, it becomes a hole in the soul of the empath. And he doesn't even realize he's falling. Blocking this requires emotional awareness and clear boundaries. It is to realize that a smile behind a criticism, a hug that weighs, an inexplicable silence. All of this can be the resonance of the shadow of others that resists its light. If you feel that every conversation, every gesture makes you lighter or exhausted, notice, where is the giving and receiving? This realization does not erase your care. It makes you more human, stronger, more whole, because the true empath does not wear out. He shines brightly, even when he faces resentment, recognizing that his light flows best when he doesn't try to illuminate the darkness of others without permission. Empathy is not submission, the power to set limits without losing the essence. For many empaths, the line between empathy and submission is blurred. You feel the other deeply. He knows when something is wrong without anyone saying a word, and therefore it ends up giving too much. You get too much. It forgives too much. It can take too much, until he starts to get confused. Being empathetic is not being weak, but the world often makes you believe that it is, as if his sensitivity was a sign of weakness, as if setting limits meant being cold, harsh, selfish. And then you allow it. It allows more than it should. It allows emotional invasions. It allows deafening silences. It allows charges disguised as care. And by allowing it, it distances itself from itself. The essence of the empath is not in accepting everything. It's in feeling everything. And even then, choosing what goes in and what doesn't go into your soul. Setting limits is not closing yourself off. It is to protect the sacred house that exists within you. The big lie that many empaths believe is that if they set limits, they will lose love, connection, affection, that the other person will leave if you say no. But think about it. What kind of affection is this that only exists when you annul yourself? When you start saying no, some walk away. That is true. But they're not moving away from you. They're moving away from your strength. Because empathy with strength scares those who only knew how to deal with their fragility. Saying, "It hurts me, this isn't good for me, I need space." It doesn't make you tough. It makes you someone whole. This is how empathy becomes mature, strong. Hooray. And herein lies the secret. Limits don't keep you away from the right people. They push away the wrong ones, the ones that were there to consume, to manipulate, to use your light as nourishment, not as inspiration. This process can hurt, because the empath has an attachment to harmony. He hates conflict. But what hurts more? The discomfort of saying no, or the pain of carrying weights that are not yours? True empathy is revolutionary. It is not passive. She is active. She says, "I feel you, but I feel it too." This is the key to emotional integrity. It is to stop being just listening and also to be a voice. Stop being just a lap and also be a body. By setting boundaries, you show that your light has structure. And the structure is what prevents it from fading with the wind of others. Carl Jung was talking about the process of individuation, becoming who you are, fully. This process requires the empath to step out of the role of martyr and into the role of guardian of his own soul. This is not selfishness, this is consciousness. You can keep feeling it, you can keep loving, you can continue to be empathetic. But you need to learn to say, "Not here, not like that, not with me." Because when empathy finds limits, respect is born. When sensitivity finds strength, self-love is born. And when the empath understands that, no one else can manipulate. It's shine without apologizing, how to free yourself from those who love you with bitterness. We have reached the point where everything converges. The empath needs to stop apologizing for shining. You've already done it. Shone, and then hid, received a compliment, and he answered with excessive humility, almost denying it. It was recognized and felt uncomfortable, all because he learned that being too light was too intense, and that the others did not know how to deal with. But what if I told you that your light isn't a problem? It's a revolution. Shining isn't about getting attention. It's about existing in its entirety. No masks, without armor, without fear. But most empaths grew up hearing that feeling too much was a burden, that being profound was strange, that being kind was weakness. So you've learned to shine less, to fit into small relationships. But this disguise has a cost, a high cost. Your soul feels trapped, suppressed, erased. You begin to believe that in order to be loved, you need to be less sensitive, less intense, less true. And you begin to mold yourself to what others endure, not to what you are. This is the cruelest point. When you adapt to the other's discomfort with your light, you betray yourself. And internal betrayals hurt more than any external rejection. Many empaths live relationships like this, where the other loves, but with bitterness, wonder, but with competition, praises, but with poison. It is a conditional love which says, I like you as long as you don't shine brighter than me. And you accept because they are afraid of losing, because he believes he can make it work. But there comes a time, and maybe that moment is now, when your soul says, I can't fit in what diminishes me anymore. This is the time to break away. Break up with those who love you with pain, with those who tolerate you but don't celebrate you, with those who do not vibrate with their victory. They just observe in silence, because you deserve more, because your light needs space, it needs air, it needs freedom. Jung said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you really are, and you'll only achieve that if you stop apologizing for being the way you are, because he feels the way he feels, for shining as it shines. This is not about arrogance, it's about wholeness. It's about recognizing that your light doesn't have to be hidden so as not to disturb. It needs to be shared with those who have light as well, with whom he is not scared, with whom it adds. The empath's liberation begins when he chooses to love himself more than the need to be accepted by others, when he stops shrinking to fit, and it begins to expand. So if you are living this, if you feel that you need to, erase yourself to be loved. Listen to this phrase, shine, even if no one applauds, even if some are bothered, even if they lose. Shine because you are light, and light does not ask for permission. It illuminates. The lesson that remains, you've spent your whole life trying to be the safe haven of others. He helped, cared for, silenced pain that was not his. He shone even when the world said he was too much. It has been shaped, adjusted, shrunk. And yet, it was not enough for someone who only knew how to love with resentment. But here's the truth that no one told you. You never needed to be less to be loved. Its light is not excess, it's identity. Your empathy is not weakness. It is a gift, and the fact that you feel the world deeper than others is not a problem. It is called mission, purpose. From today, may you stop hiding. May you no longer apologize for being whole. May you stop saving those who do not want to be saved and start rescuing yourself. Set limits. Say no. Protect your shine. Love without getting lost. And most of all, shine for yourself, because its light, even when it bothers, transforms. And whoever feels uncomfortable with it, perhaps more than ever, he needs to learn how to light his own. If this video touched something inside you, like, comment and share. Its light deserves to be seen, and it can light up many others out there.